How many flights had you flown over the hump?
No, I don't fly as many of those regular flights because I fly the scheduled flight, carrying passengers from Calcutta, Xinjiang, Kunming, and Chongqing. Then when there's a charter flight, usually I got the charter flight from Calcutta, especially the Navy intelligence. They have like an OSS, they have secret station for reporting. And one time we were, he wanted to go up to 500 miles west of Peking, and that the U.S. Army plane would not take him because they didn't want to lose the airplane. There's no airfield. So he came and asked me to evacuate. I said, I'll take him there if they prepare a place where we could land. So I took him, and the Chinese Dai Li, he's a top intelligence man in China, does those things. And they work very close together.
Can you just tell us roughly, have you had some unusual cargo in some of your flights? And some funny stories from that?
Well, many times we have a cargo, we don't know what it is. You see, when they charter a flight, they don't tell you what cargo they have.
But did you have an idea of what it was?
Well, mostly communicate. I know that those are for, mostly they go for communicate. They set up a station for reporting weather, activity, what's moving, and they get it on the coast. They see the Japanese Navy movement, they see.
What was it like flying some of the routes for CNAC, like let's say from Hong Kong to Shanghai, because that was considered a very dangerous route, right, at one point?
In the early days, flying Shanghai to Hong Kong, Canton, is for the Pan American Clipper that flies from San Francisco. See, the Pan American bought CNAC in 1930, end of 32 and 33, was that the Chinese government would not let any airlines fly into Shanghai. If they allow anyone flying to Shanghai, they would have to let the Japanese fly into Shanghai. So, the BOAC that fly to Hong Kong, they want to go from here to Shanghai. And the Air France that go to Hanoi and here, they also want to go to Shanghai. The Russians also want to come down to northwest China. And of course, if they allow any country like go into China, they would have to allow the Japanese go in. That's why. Then the Pan America decided to buy 45% of CNAC. So they use CNAC, but there is Pan American plane that fly to Hong Kong here. They meet the Clipper from San Francisco through Manila. Manila from here, they land in Capt airfield.
Now, during the war, the commercial flights, like you had a few that were attacked by the Japanese, so you had to take off in the evening in bad weather to avoid.
Well, that was in Hong Kong.
Yeah. So did you?
From 1938 to the end of 1941. No, we used to, because one time Wood, he was former Pan American pilot. He took off from here. He went up the Pearl River, and the Japanese shot him down. And then he ditched the plane near Macau. And as they swimming away from the plane, they still were strafing, and they killed the one crew member and some passenger. The pilot and the radio operator was okay, but some other passenger was killed in the water. But they salvaged the plane, they brought it to Capt airfield, and they repaired it, and it flew.
Tell us about the insignia, Zhong. Yeah. The name of CNAC in Chinese, what did it translate to, literally in English?
It was China National Aviation Corporation. it was set up by former with Curtis Wright. Curtis Wright had the company set up 45% American, 55% Chinese. And the German came in with the Lufthansa from Germany. They trying to fly between Germany and through northwest China into Shanghai. But the Russians would not let them. They had set all the station up from the border of Russia to Shanghai. And the farthest they went was the Hami. And they couldn't even go to Dehua because the Dehua was all controlled mostly by Russians in those days. And they never run a scheduled flight between Shanghai and Hami. Only once in a while they make a flight.
What was it like flying in China, having been born there, and then going to America, and then coming back? And even though you were flying commercial flights, you were still part of the war effort to help China. Did you feel was that very meaningful for you?
No. Well, first, when I wanted to learn how to fly, it was a project. But then, in those days, even now, very few Chinese flying for a living in the States. Until after the war, then you may have some Chinese working in the airline. Before that, so there was no chance for me to even work in the airline in the United States in 1930. And then when I went to Shanghai, I joined that CNAC, which is 45% Pan America, but then there was still very large discrimination. Well, even when I would check out as a captain in 1936, the American would get U.S. dollar, I was getting local dollar. In other words, I get if they get $1 U.S., I get $1 local money. So, so it was very. Well, in those days, I didn't care too much at the beginning because I wanted to fly. And I thought that was the way it should be, the discrimination, that's the way they run the company. But as it get more, before the Pearl Harbor, I was checked out in 1936, and people, Chinese pilots check out in 1941 were getting the same pace I get. But you know, there's still nothing like the American. I want to set up a seniority, a scale. If a person check out this year, and the next year, well, the person check out, the 1 year older should get a little higher pay or something. But they wouldn't set up. And then of course the Pearl Harbor came, we forgot all about it. And then when in 1943, that subject brought up again, and people, I've been checking on 1936, and people checking up in 1941, 42, 43, getting the same pay I get. So I still request they set up some kind of a pay scale for different seniority, and they wouldn't have. They didn't say they were. They didn't want to pay too much attention. So in 1943, I'd say I'll quit. And then after then he say, how could you quit? He said, when you left Hong Kong with only one suitcase, and you want to quit. And then after a couple of days later, he wrote me a letter. He wanted to see me. Then he said, he said, oh, you working so too hard. He said, how about you go over the U.S. and ferry a plane back? Oh, then I forgot all about the raise, because I haven't been back for 10 years, over 10 years. And then I do want to come and ferry a plane back. So after I ferry a plane back, it didn't set the scale wasn't too much, but I didn't bother too much because he said one thing, You can't, they said, well, at least what I was, have some kind of scale set up. And then, of course, the World War II end. The other company, Eurasia, is now called CATC, and asked me to go teach a pilot to fly the Japanese DC-3. So I told the management, I said, if you fly from Shanghai to Chongqing, you have to carry full load of gas for a return trip, because you have no gas in Chongqing to come back. And then you won't carry much payload. And he asked his pilot to check, and then he found out the Japanese DC-3 exactly the same as American, but the horsepower is over 200 horsepower under the Americans. And then I suggested they buy some surplus, because after the war there's a lot of DC-3 C-47 for $20,000. And then he asked me to go talk to TV Zone if they can have foreign exchange so they can buy some surplus plane. And when I went to see TV Zone, the reason I could go see TV Zone is used to fly him around. And then when he went to the Japanese stranded in Nanking, just after the war, I took him to Nanking. So then I went to talk to him, and he said, "Oh, they only one airline." So I said, if they have their own fund, could they buy it in have black market U.S. stock, buy in with their own money? And he said, "Oh, if they got money to buy, okay." And then I went back to talk to this fellow, and it happened that a fellow I knew, he was next table in a coffee shop, and he said, maybe I go talk to some banker, maybe he can help you. So he went to ask this banker. Then this banker happened to be one of the second largest bank in Chongqing that time. He owned the cement factory. There's the only cement factory at that time. And after 30 minutes, we went to meet him, and then we talked about it. And he said, he lent me, I said, how much I need? I said, $250,000, $400,000. And he said, he agreed if I go work for them. At that time, I didn't think I was going to work for them because I was number 3 in seniority. You see, the man in charge of that operation, he was number 1, and the second operation up in Binjiang, he was number 2. In seniority, I'm number 3. And they were returning to the United States. After the war, they were going to return to the United States. So in seniority, I was number 1, but I would be not in the company's number 1, you see. It was number 1 be American, what's it? Although I got American passport, but that doesn't count.
Did that make you, were you disappointed?
No. No, when they asked me if I could work for the CATC, he would loan the money. Then I thought, gee, with my seniority in the CNAC, I didn't think of quitting at all. But then he said, if you don't join them, he won't loan the money. Then I talked to the manager of CATC. I said, only if the condition, let me run the operation 100%, and I would no interference from them. Then he agreed that if he don't agree, he don't get the money. So he gave me a loan as at $400,000. Then he said, you going to India, you need some ruby. Then he said, I give you another $100,000 in ruby. So when we get because that check of $400,000, we couldn't cash it until confirmed. The bank would not cash the check until confirmed from New York. So he know that the condition. So he said, you need the ruby. So when you go to India, so he gave us $100,000 rupees. That's about $350,000.